Are you paying a ton in shipping to send out products, samples, and whatever else? The fees really add up, but lucky for you, we now have a partner that gets you access to the discounted shipping rates that are usually only available to those big companies. I worked with them for my last beverage brand, and I can tell you they definitely got us savings. Whether you're sending overnight samples, fulfilling e-commerce orders, or even a 40-foot ocean container, our partner, Enterprise Purchasing Group, or EPG, has got you covered. There are a bunch of free benefits you can get by signing up with them. You can get up to an 86% discount on small parcel shipments from UPS, DHL Express, UPS, and more. You get really competitive LTL and FTL rates through UPS. You get discounted spot and fixed ocean rates through Flexport and Maersk. You get exclusive air freights, and you also get preferential terms with supply chain financing. All you need to do is reach out to Francis Agas. His email is francis, Francis, at enterprisepurchasing.com. Mention the Startup CPG discount and take advantage of those savings. Good luck, everybody, and happy shipping.
Being an independent, we do make sure that we always have deals as you walk in the store. That's a big thing for us. Our customers really just love the fact that we've been in the community for 30 years. We're around the community. We donate our time and our money into the communities, and these could be your neighbors that are in the back offices, not necessarily someone off in Austin or Denver or something like that. So they really appreciate how we give back to the community, and that's probably one of our big hallmarks.
GreenAcres is the place to be. The buyer did a great interview with me. CPGers, I think we really nailed it in this interview. Tyler Killgore is a really hardworking guy. He's the central buyer and category manager for all of the GreenAcres. He covers everything in the store except supplements. Now, I've never been in a GreenAcres, but honestly, it sounds like such a beautiful store. I hope I get a chance to visit someday. They pull from Cahey, Dallas, which is a really popular DC, so it's a great option for a lot of brands in our community. And I always love to hear when a buyer like Tyler is open to hear pitches from brands year-round, and he even drops his email address at the end of the episode. Thank you so much to Tyler for being a supporter of emerging brands, and listen in to find out what trade shows you can catch him at and what he thinks are the biggest opportunities in the store. Enjoy! Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode with Tyler Killgore, who is an emerging talent in the grocery industry. Tyler is the central buyer and category manager spearheading operations for GreenAcres Market, which is a 5-store natural and organic supplement chain in Kansas and Oklahoma, and it's one of the real tastemakers of the natural channel. After graduating from Washburn University in 2018 with a degree in political science, Tyler returned to his hometown, navigating several roles before co-founding a direct store delivery, or DSD, venture, where he learned a ton before moving to the retail side. First, he was in a customer service role with an online sporting goods company, and then moved into procurement. Then, in August 2022, he embarked on a new chapter at GreenAcres Market under the mentorship of Lynette Frisbee. A fast learner, he absorbed a lot of knowledge and expertise and quickly ascended to the position of central buyer and category manager in May of 2023. And a fun fact, in his free time, he enjoys powerlifting, restoring his great-grandfather's 1972 Chevy C10, golf, and as I just learned, he has a cat also that might participate with us a little bit on the podcast. Tyler, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So, well, I think we could just jump right into it, but I was really flattered and excited to hear that you had actually listened to some of our episodes before. And I just was wondering, were there any that you particularly enjoyed or that you remember listening to?
So in particular, I love any of them with a buyer, like whether it be a category manager or anything like that. Most of what I had experienced previously was either kind of self-taught through intuition or what I got directly from Lynette and what she had taught me. And so without having a large team behind me, it's sometimes kind of difficult, and you can kind of get into an echo chamber with yourself. And that's what I like to hear, is other voices in the industry, and making sure sometimes just kind of a self check to make sure
Yeah.
you're not going crazy.
I wonder, what are some of those things that you feel like you're especially interested to learn from other buyers? Is it like how they source brands, or how they make decisions, or the kind of suggestions that they have for how brands can do well with them?
So it's everything, right? Uh, it was interesting. I developed into this role relatively quickly. It was about 8 to 10 months. It depends where you really put the marker on. But it was about 8 to 10 months. And during that time, it's great to have input from one person, but you're absorbing so much information. You're absorbing how these trade shows work, and you're absorbing I was absorbing how grocery work, which is completely different than sporting goods. Sporting goods don't expire. Sporting goods, don't have the same.
My tennis racket sure doesn't. I had that thing forever.
So it's completely different. How distribution channels are different, because you do have fresh that has to be transported, and you have to make sure that it's done in reefers, and everything else is just completely different than dry sporting goods, where you could throw on to a Pelican and have them deliver it to you if you really wanted to.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's really great to hear. And just before I forget to ask, powerlifting, what's your favorite exercise in powerlifting? Like, if you really don't have the energy to do a full workout, like the one that's your go-to, you can get the energy up to do.
So I prefer squats. I'm the only tall guy you'll ever hear say that. It's because I have very short legs, so it's very easy to get down the whole way for me in comparison to everything else. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's unfortunately I have a little bit of a power belly right now. The diet has not been great since Expo West, but that's my fault.
Well, I know you're busy over there, and if anybody, you or anyone, wants a great show to watch that will motivate you while working out, I like to watch. It's called Physical 100 on Netflix, which is basically like the top 100 Korean physiques from like rowing and CrossFit, and they compete in all these games to be the winner. And it's so good, and mainly because they're so respectful of each other. I love it. Anyways, not CPG related, but probably they take a lot of CPG products.
More than likely. I think the crossover is pretty high. The crossover between my, garbage fast food pizza that I had last night is not, though.
All right. So, I'm really interested in this topic of mentorship, and I don't think it's one that we've explored too much on this podcast. So what is it like to work with Lynette? I've never met her personally, but I know her name for sure, having definitely sent her emails when I was a brand, and, just trying to get on her radar and stuff. But what is that process like of her helping you get up to speed in, a brand new category, let's say, just learning all the tips and tricks?
Well, it was great. And this isn't necessarily always a dynamic that you get, but she was looking to retire. She was, I'm not going to say her age on here. So she'd come so she was ready to retire. And, so it allowed there to not be as much competition. It was very much I am going to teach you what I know. You can come to me with your ideas, and I will tell you that if it's just categorically bad, or, where you can work on it and stuff. Additionally, one of the cool things, whenever I was doing sporting goods, I was tossed in feet first in the middle of a pandemic where no one could get anything shipped, right? And that, that was the same in this industry as well. But I wasn't necessarily, there wasn't that teaching moment. It was just kind of figure it out. So it was really nice to have an ability to have a teaching moment. It really, since she was doing the day-to-day in the beginning, I was able to get more into the data side of it than I would have been able to if I was just to take over day-to-day operations right away.
Got it. And what is the data source that you typically use? Is it just like an internal system, or do you use, external stuff, Nielsen, Spins, that kind of stuff?
So Spins is the number one external. And then additionally, we have our internal POS system, which we'll talk about later, but added an inventory system to that because Spins only really can show you what's going through your register. So that kind of added some of the back end for us, especially in matters of expiring product or anything like that.
Yes, which actually is a topic that I definitely want to dig in further, but maybe for the benefit of all of our listeners, we could also just start with a little bit of an intro. I think just maybe learn a little bit more about you and then also GreenAcres. So, one thing in your background was that caught my attention was the DSD venture that you started. And as a former beverage CEO, what I know about DSD is that it's very complicated and hard work. So I wonder if maybe you could just tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm sure it has given you a really interesting perspective.
So me and a good friend from high school, jumped feet first into it. In 2019, we were able to garner a contract with a brand that was looking to be up and coming, and reintroduce themselves to the market. They've been in the market for a while, but they were looking to reintroduce themselves to the market. They're semi-local. They were Kansas City based. We were based in Wichita, Kansas. So about 3 hours geographical drive, but relatively close, relatively local. And they were looking to get back into the game with it. So we were just like, you know what? We still can do our day jobs. We go in at 8 or 9 o'clock, depending. And so it's like, well, we can be at a store at 5:30 in the morning, chucking product, be at work at 8, and then, be gone by 5, 6, and then, be back after it. And, do nightly, do the nighttime stocking. And that went great for a while. But then we started adding more and more points of distribution. And we just couldn't keep up. It was still 2021, so we were still struggling in the labor market to find people that could help, that were reliable enough to assist with it. And it was just, the territory was too large for two people to handle all on their own, especially trying to work it around work hours.
And the reliability is because they would just be late or not show up, or just because you couldn't keep people in the role and, you couldn't, it's hard to find new people then, and just a lot of turnover.
So it's just two of us, that we were handling accounting, purchasing, selling, stocking, everything. So we were looking for people that wanted to help us with the stocking portion of it, because that's the most labor intensive portion of it that needs to be done, depending on the store in, a time window. So we were like, okay, well, let's find people that could help us with it. We couldn't find a platform that was inexpensive enough for us to take that could, GPS track.
Mm-hmm.
What we were having is all sorts of time fraud, any time fraud that you could find, we were having it. We were selling per item. So every item had a pay scale, and we found that was the most efficient because we were so spread out. And it'd be like, oh yeah, I took 8 cases of this. Yeah, they took 8 cases of the product, and the product ended up in the garbage or wherever. Yeah, it got itself removed from the warehouse, but never got itself on a shelf. Yeah. And then reports of like, hey, we haven't seen your guy for 2 weeks. Well, we've been paying him for 2 weeks. Yeah. And so it was a challenge of trying to, if we were able to stay within specifically our market, I think it would have been a little bit easier. But we were trying to take over about a 90 square mile circle. And it was too big of a bite, especially right after college. I think I had been graduated for 8 months.
Yeah. Well, that's very ambitious. I applaud you guys for doing that. I recorded a podcast episode with Ginger Labs also, who's built that kind of a self-distribution system up in New York. And it's pretty interesting to hear, because I've heard from a lot of brands the challenges that you have with some of those kinds of roles, with field sales, delivery roles. I've heard, honestly, from some people, horror stories. Like, you can hire someone like that as a W-2, and then one day you find out they have 3 other W-2 jobs, and they're just not doing the things you hope that they would do. It's so hard to track. So at least with Ginger Labs, it seemed like when they were doing the self-distribution, really he was relying on it being, it's a close network of people, like friends of theirs who were in on, Yeah. So, but I mean, that's tough, but good for you. And is there anything that you feel like you really learned from that experience that helps you do your job better now?
So learned a bunch about selling indirectly to retailers, right? It took a while to get on this side of the desk, but it was a lot of direct retailers scraping for those points. We were able to expand the distribution network 400%, which again, we grew too fast for ourselves, but struggling from success, I suppose. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of direct one-to-one. And there's also knowing a lot of what the brands go through with supplies and, issues and stuff like that. And then learned all about distribution. We were working out of a tiny warehouse, but it's still a warehouse nonetheless. So it's a lot of the same issues that we see now. It's just on a lot smaller scale.
Got it. Okay, cool. So let's chat now about GreenAcres. I myself have never gotten to go to a GreenAcres, unfortunately. So for me and anyone else who hasn't, how would you describe it? What's the chain like, and what would it be like if one of us walked in for the first time?
So our founder, Barb Hoffman, was big on interior design, and that's what she wanted to do. And you can tell it whenever you walk in. The stores are colorful. Everything is merchandised beautifully. That's a big key for us, is the merchandising of the product. Whenever we do a secondary display, we don't just throw cases on a shelf and it's like, okay, secondary display. There's seasonal bits. Then there's other just accoutrements that you add to the display that kind of gives a whole different life. I remember whenever, since I have grown up here for the majority of my life, I remember going in once whenever I was younger. I was like, oh, this is a place, for fancy people to shop at. What 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds think is completely different than reality sometimes. But just visually, the presentation's very beautiful. Barb was actually inspired by mothers out there in California whenever she was designing the stores. So.
That's so funny. I was just thinking that actually when you were talking about like how the store being designed beautifully. I was out there at the Mothers in, I forget where, near Long Beach or something. And the store manager explained that to me. And he's like, look, do you see the color blocks? I was like, whoa, I couldn't believe it. Like just organizing even all the products that are orange together and then red. I was like, wow, this actually is fantastic. It's really visually appealing.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of our big things. It's just making sure, everyone eats with their eyes first. So same concept on the store level. Whenever you walk in, the first thing that you'll see is the produce section, always fresh, organic, and full, which has its own challenges sometimes. So it's all beautiful. And then our flagship store has a deli, a fresh deli. That is the next thing. So you smell fresh food coming out of the stores and everything else to kind of, complement the shopping experience.
That's awesome. And I know it can be a big draw. So what about the consumers? There are probably a couple other options out there as well. What do you think makes your consumers different from some of the other chains or grocery options out there?
So whenever natural grocers came into the market, into our market, they set up specifically 1 mile closer to the highway than we did, than our existing locations were, which props to them. But our customers care about the local selection that we have. Additionally, we can't beat everyone on pricing all the time, being an independent, but we do make sure that we always have deals as you walk in the store. That's a big thing for us. Our customers really just love the fact that we've been in the community for 30 years. We're around the community. We donate our time and our money into the communities. And these could be your neighbors, that are in the back offices, not necessarily someone off in Austin or Denver or something like that. So they really appreciate how we give back to the community. And that's probably one of our big hallmarks.
That's awesome. So sourcing, especially some great local stuff. And then do you have a philosophy around sourcing that extends beyond that? Like I know Natural Grocers, for example, has a very exhaustive list of things that they do not want in their stores, maybe the most strict of anyone out there. Is there a typical kind of strategy that you have for what you're interested to have in the stores?
So I have a whole list. I have a PDF of unacceptable ingredients that I printed out, and it's only 5 pages long, so it's probably not as long as theirs is, but it's taped up to my desk, right where I can see. I look over my laptop and I can see those unacceptable ingredients. We want to make sure that we're giving the freshest options available and also the cleanest options available. Obviously, there's some items specifically in the local categories that we kind of bend a little bit to because we want to be able to support the communities, and some items just cannot be, scaled just small scale without preservatives. It just can't happen. So, sometimes there's a little variation there, but in all our main products, we try to keep, big thing is no preservatives, no artificial flavors.
Awesome. Okay, great. Is that what you see most commonly having to say no to of stuff that gets submitted to you is artificial flavors and preservatives?
Preservatives seem to be kind of sneaking in, at least from what I've seen, is the larger brands are kind of seeing what they can get away with in if I put this preservative in, what will be the reaction to it? So preservatives are definitely number one. I don't see much on flavors. Sometimes I've been seeing more colors presented to me. That's been the other one that has been big.
We'll be right back. Hola, amigos. About 4 years ago, I got a message from a designer in Colombia who said she'd like to work with Startup CPG to build her reputation in the US. I couldn't believe how affordable her pricing was, and the quality looked top-notch. I started work with them for Startup CPG, and then a bunch of my other CPG projects as well. Fast forward to today, they are the most beloved agency in our Startup CPG community. They've got dozens of happy customers like Prickly and so many more. I recommend them to absolutely anybody who will listen because the combo of top-notch quality and very reasonable pricing is exactly what you want as a startup brand. You can hire them for branding, packaging, your website, or they actually have an awesome startup package that will do all three. If you want to learn more, email them at startupcpg@wagondesignstudio.com or check the show notes. You could also post on our Slack for feedback and just be overwhelmed by how many people want to sing their praises. Gracias, Wagon! And now, back to the show. Interesting. Okay, cool. So, Tyler, how do you typically find brands, or how are brands finding you? Is it, direct submission? Are they finding you on LinkedIn? Is it at trade shows? Is it them walking into the store and figuring out how to find you? How does that typically work for you?
So local and smaller brands will call one of our locations, and the store managers give them my email or my desk phone. Usually email's the easiest, right, to translate over the phone because it's the easiest to remember. But so they'll call a store and, we'll take a look at it. Sometimes it's a no, sometimes it's a yes. It just kind of depends. Trade shows are a big one. Whenever I came in, the first show I went to was Expo East, which was a little bit overwhelming to be the first show to be dropped in at. So I didn't know a whole heck of a lot at that time. So I was kind of looking and seeing where people were gathering. I was like, yes, I need to go there. That's where I need to start looking. Obviously they have something, and sometimes it's just the spectacle of a display. Sometimes it's giving out full sample items. If you're giving out full size candy bars, people will stop. But then other times, it is a unique and a emerging brand, and those are the times that you're just like, yes, I found one.
Yeah.
Then with all of my broker partners, I also have monthly meetings set up. So with, everyone's always moving around trying to find the best broker fit. Well, sometimes, broker A didn't show something because it wasn't on their radar, but broker B, it's a new item. So then it shows like, oh, this fits perfectly. We wish we would have found this 2 years ago, but, here we are now, and we can have it now. So
how many different broker partners do you meet with on a monthly basis?
Monthly, I think I have 12, but please don't call that an exact number.
That's a lot.
I think I have 12 standing on the first week of the month.
Oh, okay, great. And so those are people you just typically have worked a lot with. They've got a lot of stuff going on in your store. Probably there are other brokers also that would love to get on that list with you as well. I'm guessing there's some probably you're open to hear pitches from them for brands that you think are interesting. And then maybe once they have a few things that they're working on you with, maybe they get upgraded to the monthly call.
Yeah, not every broker needs a monthly touch point. If you only have like 6 or 7 brands that we're able to work with, I think monthly is too often. But then you'll have big ones like DPI, PMI, or Acosta, where it's like you need to have monthly meetings, and even then, it sometimes feels like that's not enough to make sure you have all the right items. So it's not necessarily a vetting process. I think I'm the only one brave enough. I have a meeting link in my email signature that you can just go and set something up, and it doesn't even ask me, do you want to have a meeting with me?
Dangerous to throw that out here. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I think I'm the only one with that. But so it's really easy. I try to make it as easy as possible to connect. I am fairly active on LinkedIn sometimes. It just kind of depends on the week on how much I'm on there. But then that's also another avenue.
And so with some of those bigger brokers, you probably have to run through a lot of products with them sometimes. What's that like? Because I've worked with brokers before, and I kind of knew like, hey, they're going to go in there. They only get the one chance to meet with Tyler this month, and they have hundreds of brands that they work with. So they might be trying to review 30, 40 products with him in an hour slot. What is that? Does that happen that way? What is it like?
So I'll look at as many products as we can get through. Usually it's pretty good. The focus is on new items with existing partners and then new brands. And so I was like, hey, these are what you need to come to me with if you're going to pitch it to me. I need to know SRP. I need to know minimum order quantity if it's a direct, and I need a pricing list if it's a direct. And like, let's not even start the conversation until you have those three things lined up, because I can't make a decision, and then it will get lost in the shuffle.
And are you looking at things for like seasonal buys, or just kind of to try once, or are you typically mainly focused on stuff that's going to be permanent items or for a reset?
So seasonal items kind of flow into that new items category. It's seasonal. We actually get from the Keiki show, which I'll be leaving for tomorrow at this time. That's where we focus our seasonal. Direct seasonal is great, but so hard to time drops. And that's been a big challenge. And since I'm the only one over all of the grocery, refrigerated, and frozen, timing drops is super important to me. So everyone makes sure that they have the right pricing on everything. So seasonal, that's where we normally focus. The store managers do have a little bit of freedom in that they can bring in some seasonal items on their own, especially with their locals or direct order items. They have a little bit more freedom on.
So is there anything in the store that you don't cover?
Supplements.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
that's a big
busy.
one. That's a big one. I don't want the supplement business.
Really? I figured as a power lifter, you might be interested in that stuff.
It's a completely different world. Sports supplementation is very easy in comparison to longevity supplementation. And Matt, our supplement buyer, is also a part owner of the company, and he's only been doing it for 32 years. So he's got a pretty good solid handle on it. I'll let him have it as long as he wants.
Yeah, that's great. How many new items would you say you're launching in a month? I'm just like, it sounds like you're just reviewing and launching and working with just tons of stuff.
So the good news is since I am the one that manages all of the categories, it's very easy to not have to have a set reset schedule. It'd be like, hey, I'm looking at this right now. Well, it doesn't matter because it's not going to butt up against someone else's section, since the other section is also mine. So I kind of keep it rolling. It's like, hey, I'm looking, for this stuff, but I'm open for anything. Throw me any idea. But this is what I'm specifically looking for right now. And just doing it rolling. Spins gives an executive report every month where you can see it's like, oh, that's trending down really bad. Let's see what we can do to kind of lift that category.
Interesting. And okay, so you say I'm open for anything sometimes. How are you going to make a decision? You get a brand you're excited about. Like obviously you only have a certain amount of space in the set. So if there's something you like, are you then going to kind of go look at your set and see what's lagging, what you might want to take off, or some facings you want to remove? How do you think about that?
So I have the store send me pictures of because we have a 4-hour gap between our stores. So our Bradley Fair store is 4 hours approximately from Lawton. I drive like a grandpa, so it took 4.5 hours to get there, but which I was just down there last week actually. So, so it's like, send me pictures of these sets. Let's see if we can figure out, like, obviously why something's a set's down. We have outs with Keiki sometimes, or the brand, just won't have the production capability to fulfill all orders. And sometimes that's like, oh, well, if that tag fell off the shelf and it's number 1 or number 2 item, like that's pretty obvious that that's something that needs to be filled to keep the category moving. Other times it's like, okay, let's look at it. We just have stale items or the wrong items or something that hasn't been, I don't want to say relevant, but selling well in the region for 3 or 4 years. So we don't necessarily need that at the set anymore. And so I am very sophisticated. I take their picture, I put it in Microsoft Paint, and then I put X's through the stuff that they need a disco. And I'm like, you'll have something at 2 to 3 weeks to fill that spot.
That's amazing. And so, I mean, would it be a requirement from you then that anything the broker is showing you is already stocked in the KeHE DC?
That's probably number one priority for us. UNFI are just, we can't meet truck minimums. So we swapped from them about 18, be wrong, I feel like 18 months ago. So we, which was actually why I was brought on, was to help with the transition from UNFI over to KeHE, because that's a lot for one person to take on. And so we were doing that transition, and it just made more sense. Like, we would love to work with UNFI on some stuff, but we just can't get the minimum truck order high enough in some of the stores. We have one store that's 4,000 square foot with a back room that I can reach my arms across. I can't necessarily, fulfill my main distributor obligations and then also $2,000 order from UNFI. I don't think that's the number. I don't have it right up on the top of my head, but we also can't then hit the truck minimums, and the price would be too high if we try to pass on the fuel surcharge.
Right. So do you pull everything from the same KeHE distribution center? Which one is it?
It's the big one in Dallas. We actually waited to transition over until the Dallas one was open, which new warehouses, but those are smoothed out now. They're doing really well.
That's a great one. You can hit tons of stuff from there. And then, just out of curiosity, what is that transition like? I mean, you've got, obviously you need to swap out basically all of the products, see if, from UNFI, see if KeHE has that product, or, if it's something different, what you're switching to, redo all the pricing and the tags and everything. Is like, what were the hardest parts of that whole transition?
The hardest part was only 69% of our SKU mix transferred over. I mean, that just honestly, that's the biggest part. Now, some of that was Woodstock and Field Day, and we sold a lot of Woodstock and Field Day. So we had to be creative to get KeHE's house brand to kind of fill that void that Field Day and Woodstock left. But then there were still a bunch of other SKUs, and warehouses are always fluid. Things are always coming in and out of them. So the major ones, the major players we had, thankfully, and KeHE does assist with that transition process. They flew out a team. They were kind of suggesting things to go into spots. And then we just kind of went back and refined the selection at that point. And that takes a long time. Whenever you're dealing with a whole store of grocery, it can take a while to make sure that every set is refined and the things that are getting discontinued are the right things for the right reasons. And it took a while to really get into that rhythm. Probably took about 6 months to finally kind of get into a rhythm where we're really refining things rather than just making big sweeping changes.
And I guess I'm just curious. I don't think I've ever asked this question. I know you were newer when you started the transition, but anything that you noticed about the difference between working with a UNFI and a KeHE, not to say anything bad about anyone, but just, was there a difference that you noticed around? I mean, was there a difference on pricing that you could get from them, or, fulfillment, like they do things differently? Anything major for us newbies?
So I didn't work super closely. I'd only worked during the UNFI distribution for about 3 months. So I was mostly focused on learning how KeHE worked. And finding partners in KeHE that could help me with specific tasks. What I would say the biggest thing is we were split between 2 UNFI divisions. So we were split between East and West UNFI. So we were finally able to have a consistent SKU mix across all of our stores. It's not super uncommon, or wasn't super uncommon, for us to hear someone was in our Oklahoma City store and drove to our Wichita or our Kansas City store to pick up groceries while they were there. Like, oh, hey, this is you have one of these stores here too. I want to pick this up, but you guys don't have this item, and it was because it wasn't carried at both warehouses. Additionally, we lost a lot of, or we did have to deal with a lot of overhead on our part because we do have a promotional program. And so what we were doing is we were trucking items from either one store or another store so that we had it in all stores for our promotional period while they were, where we were running an advertisement in our newsletter for them.
Yeah, interesting. And well, I also wanted to ask on this topic of inventory. I saw you had done a LinkedIn post recently that was talking about live inventory and having implemented a system. I'm curious because I want to know what you guys spend your time on and what makes your job a lot easier. Can you just give me a little bit more insight into what's that like and how do you manage inventory and operations in addition to all the other stuff that you're doing?
So I, if I could go back 2 years, I'd smack myself in the back of the head and say, don't say to do this. But I said, whenever I started, I would do anything for an inventory system in these stores so I could see what is 4 hours away from me without having to rely necessarily on taking away from a store manager or a grocery lead to go do it for me. And I wish I could go back and put my foot in my mouth because it was a lot of overnights counting, and it's a balancing act. It's a couple long days and nights counting, but we always make it back up at the back end, either a long weekend or something like that to kind of compensate. The inventory has done so much for us just in because we also assigned positions to everything whenever we were doing that. So it's helped us so much to just be able to get a vision of the store whenever we just don't have the manpower to planogram, 5 different layouts.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. And then actually, well, just one more question on sourcing products. Do you have any tips for brands that reach out to you for, hey, aside from those basic facts that you said you need before, this is the kind of stuff that gives me a lot of confidence in your brand, whether it's a particular kind of data or just, something about the compelling part of their story or how they approach you, anything like that?
I think it's the biggest thing for me is it's not realistic to cold call a store, expect to get me on the phone and do a 20-minute sales pitch that day right on the phone. That's just I don't think that's realistic. And also I fall into this weird, millennial Gen Z divide where I don't, the phone scares me, I suppose.
Yeah, you're doing great at it.
Yeah. Text me. It'd be fine. But no, it's so hard to be like, okay, I was not planning on sitting here and doing this. And then a lot of times you just can't do the forward research on it. And so it still ends up with being circle back with me with an email. Because I need to see all of this. I can't, process, just this information you're telling me over the phone. I don't have UPCs. I don't have anything like that to kind of make a decision on. So email is always the best, and be ready for any weird question. I think every buyer has a little bit different of a process that they go through, and that's what I've heard. So don't just shoot me a minimum order quantity and SRP and be like, oh, why is it not being taken? But that's the big one, is just making sure that all your ducks in a row, and please do not have a script that you work on in a conversation. That's probably the quickest way. Whenever I'm like, X won't work, but what about Y? It's like, oh, but we will do X. It's like, well, I guess we're at an impasse. So those are my big pet peeves whenever brands call up kind of out of the blue on us.
We'll be right back.
Hey guys, I know you all want to grow on Amazon, so I'm so excited to tell you about our official Amazon agency partner, Daybreak. I think they are the best fit for emerging brands. Their retainer is less than half of what most agencies charge, and their team are total killers. I worked with them on my last brand because I'd heard such good things, and they absolutely crushed it. They'll get you started on Amazon or help you level up. First, they fix up your listing. They make your creative ads, they manage your operations and advertising, and can even help with channels like Instacart and Criteo. If you're interested, email them. It's startupcpg@daybreak.agency. It's also in the show notes. And make sure to mention Startup CPG for $600 of free design credits.
And now, back to the show.
Amazing. Really, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, great. So now let's say a brand is lucky enough to get to work with you. What kind of support do you want to see? What's possible? If I get into your store and I want to do really well, is it mainly about the promotions? Is it trying to work with you on a display or to get into the newsletter somehow? What do you really think works?
So there's all kinds of different ways to get to the end result. The best one that we've seen is with our ad program. Our ad program goes out to 700, or not 750, 70,000
There we go.
households. Yeah, it has about 100,000 website hits every month. That's the big one that really drives, at least initial trial. The Midwest is a little bit slow on adopting things. We have a digital program that we can do, promotions through, and 75% of our customers are a part of that. Sometimes redemption rate isn't the best, just because it's still kind of a newer factor. It has lowered the age of our consumer considerably over what it had been. But the print news media is still the best. And whereas, a digital avenue, you could kind of ignore it. You could swipe no on that notification, or your phone will be loaded up with so many notifications it doesn't matter. Where the physical print media at least gets to you and gets to the customer and makes them at least look at it. And usually, even if I get a newsletter or something in the mail, I'll flick through it. I may not read it, but I'll flick through it, and then something will catch my eye, and then I'll open it and read it. Especially since I don't even get junk mail anymore. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but getting something in the mail is kind of a unique thing right now.
Yeah, it's true. I personally will do pretty much anything not to get junk mail. I have this app called Paper Karma that I am a lifetime subscriber to, where you can just take a photo of mail that you don't want to get anymore, and then they go and complain to them. I agree. It's not often. I mean, some of those methods, is like for Startup CPG, for example, we have a lot of different channels for how we reach people. We have our Instagram, we have our LinkedIn, we have our Slack, but really for us, the most old school thing is our email newsletter. But that is the thing that most people are going to see, far and away more. And so that would, I think, be the equivalent of your, the print newsletter that goes out. So, I mean, just kind of like you send it, people open it, they see it. It's not so dismissible the way a lot of other pings can be.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I wish I had one here for this conversation, but I'm at my home office. But it's, full color. It's, photo paper the whole way through. It's glossy. It's definitely unique in that space, even as far as newsletters go, with the production value of it. And it takes a lot of time. I mean, we do spend a lot of time making sure it's nice before it goes out.
And that would typically also have a promotion attached to it if they're in that newsletter?
Always. Yeah. You definitely, you want a promotion attached to it, or else, someone may have seen it and may have, not interacted with the product, but they saw it on shelf at $4.99. Well, if you have it in the newsletter for $4.99, people aren't going to want to, it's not going to spur them on to interact, but they'll see it at $3.99. Oh, I didn't realize that item was on sale this month. Let me go and let me get it and, try it.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So yeah, I wonder, just for any brands that you have worked with that you've launched maybe in the last year or so, are there any examples of ones you can point to as like, that was an amazing launch? That was a great decision. They did really well. They, came in, it was definitely on trend. They supported the business and they've had a great result.
The big one for me that comes to my mind right offhand is Icelandic Provisions, but that could just be I'm biased. I personally have made sure that their launch has been successful, but I can't think of anything off of the top of my head that hasn't been successful. Utilizing either different promotion routes, free product. I think Positive Beverage is another one that we did phenomenally with. They did a vendor-funded coupon with us for a free item, and we ended up running the Keiki warehouse out of stock 3 times during that promotion, and we only had a 54% fill rate. So in theory, we could have sold another, another 4,000 cans or whatever, and we just didn't have it there to sell. That was actually really, really positive. The sales have continued to be strong, just, encouraging that initial interaction.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it sounds like everything that you're launching is doing pretty well. Do you have check-ins with brands when it's, not going so well, and try to give them some kind of an opportunity or intervention or heads up?
So I try not to ever be malicious whenever something needs to come off shelf, because we usually do work so hard at getting things placed, making sure the right items are placed. I don't like to just yank things off the shelf without giving them a chance to run. But usually that's another good thing about being in contact with the broker so much. It's like, hey, like, this item's not doing very well. Can you go to the brand? Because if you don't go to the brand, I'm going to go talk to the brand. And usually that's enough to get them moving. But also I love shows because it offers a great touch point. So we go to both KT shows and then both New Hope shows. Well, I guess Expo East isn't around anymore, but we'll be there at Newtopia. But we go to all the shows to make sure that we're there and we can make those touch points because I understand we're in the middle of Kansas, so very few brands are going to fly into our little 8-terminal airport to come say hello to us. And full disclosure, I've never been to our Oklahoma City airport, and our Lawton store doesn't have an airport. so you have to fly into OKC and drive now. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm sure we'll get to meet and hang out at Newtopia then, just so you can put it on your calendar now. Startup CPG is hosting the party at Newtopia now.
The party, okay.
Yes, it's going to be called Discotopia. And we've rented out one of the premier nightclub venues in Denver. It's called Church. And you guessed it, it's an old church. And so it looks super cool, the stained glass windows. And we're going to be doing a silent disco there. So with the headphones, and then we'll have plenty of brands demoing product there, which I think actually silent disco is brilliant for something that kind of blends networking and fun, because then you can still talk to the brands and learn about them, but you can also still have a good time. And I think the videos are going to be epic.
I went to that Goodles party that they had at Expo West, and they were trying to interact. It's like, I can't hear you over the music, and by the end of the night I was screaming so much. The next day in our meeting room I was very meek, like hissing out words, trying to communicate.
I know what that's like, and as a brand, like we are here for the brands. We don't want them to lose their voice before the last day of the show. They're going to need that the next day.
Well, I feel so bad for the people that were in the basement trying to converse after that, because that was loud. Last year.
All right. So, and then I guess maybe just lastly, Tyler, I wonder, are there any opportunities that you're seeing right now in your set? Are there any categories where you're like, man, I wish I could just find a brand like this, whether it's a particular kind of product or the mission of a brand, or just some kind of a story, or or maybe you just aren't seeing anyone demoing the right way, anything like that comes to mind?
I think the big ones that we're seeing right now that's really resurging is entrees that don't require either frozen entrees or microwavable entrees. Those are really where it seems to be the big move for us right now, that we've seen hey, we want more of this. And we were very hesitant to bring in the microwave rice pouches, but Four Sisters had one, and I thought it tasted great. And personally, I'm a microwave or Instapot only type person if it doesn't go in either of those. But we brought those in and we saw great success, and now there's some other brands joining it. And that's really the big section. And obviously traditional frozen is still really strong for us.
All right. That's amazing to hear. Super interesting. So, Tyler, those are all the questions really that I wanted to ask you during this time. I really thank you for making yourself available and sharing all of these insights with everybody. Is there a good way for people who are interested to kind of follow along with you? Is it, adding you on LinkedIn? I know you said you're pretty active there.
Yeah, so you can add me on LinkedIn. I believe I'm the only Tyler Killgore on there right now, the last time I checked. So I'm pretty easy to find. And then also, always Tyler K at greenacres.com. You can find me there. I have not ventured into Instagram yet. I don't really have an Instagrammable face. So I've got a face for radio. So one day we'll get there. But LinkedIn is usually the best way to follow anything professionally. And then, like I said, if anyone has a pitch deck that wants to go for it, Tyler K at greenacres.com is the email.
Tyler, that's very nice of you. I also have reluctantly got into Instagram when a younger person on my team years ago showed me it. I'm like, well, I guess I got to do it. And then I got very addicted to it. So
Then we did Instagram, or I did Instagram or helped with the Instagram whenever I was part of doing sporting goods. And it's just so hard to get engagement on there. I feel so bad for everyone because we were just like, oh, 8% engagement. Yes.
It's wild as a company how low the engagement is versus your personal page. Like with my friends, you can have 20 times as many followers on a company page and get the same engagement. Same is true on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. Okay, Tyler. Well, man, it was just great to meet you and get to talk to you a bit. And I look forward to us hanging out at Newtopia, and we'll get our disco on. It'll be great. We'll find you some great new products, probably some entrees.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast today, it would really help us out if you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I am Daniel Scharff. I'm the host and founder of Startup CPG. Please feel free to reach out or add me on LinkedIn. If you're a potential sponsor that would like to appear on the podcast, please email partnerships@startupcpg.com. And reminder to all of you out there, we would love to have you join the community. You can sign up at our website, startupcpg.com, to learn about our webinars, events, and Slack channel. If you enjoyed today's music, you can check out my band. It's the Super Fantastics on Spotify Music. On behalf of the entire Startup CPG team, thank you so much for listening and your support. See you next time.